Okay, so I had to re-record everything, which is highly annoying because as you'll see, things are missing. I couldn't get all my recruitment posters in there. It's just a big old mess, and they were not able to show me what I was needed to do to get the videos in, and now some of the pictures won't even show up, but enough complaining. This is Chapter 13, Section 2. This is Europe Plunges into War. All right, so here is a political cartoon regarding the alliances that were made before the assassination of the Archduke, that once he and his beloved wife, Sophie, are murdered by Gavrilo Princip, this chain of events goes in there. So, the Serbia, then Austria, then Russia, then Germany, then France, and of course, a little late to the game, but better late than never. And a little chubby looking is Great Britain. So when the Great War begins, you start with armies on the march. And it really all starts, again, it starts with Austria versus Serbia, when Austria declares war on Serbia, and Serbia says, oh my gosh, I need some help. Serbia goes to their neighbor, who is also a, Slavic peoples, and that is Russia. Well, when Austria sees that Russia's involved, then Austria freaks out a little bit and goes and gets their ally, Germany. So now you have Austria and Germany and Russia and Serbia. And Germany's taking a look at both Russia and Serbia and pretty much ignoring Serbia, but looking at Russia and saying, okay, I know that France is Russia's ally, and eventually the two of them are going to be at war with me. I don't want to fight both of them, because that would mean I have someone on either side of me. That's called a two-front war, and that is very bad in military terms. So the plan that they come up with is called the Schlieffen Plan, and essentially what they decide is they're going to swing in, beat the heck out of France, defeat France, turn right around, and then go get Russia with their full army. Now, if you're France and Germany declares war on you, most likely you're going to expect them to come from, Germany. So, they decide that they're going to, quote, surprise France by coming through Belgium, coming around, sweeping through Paris, and then going. Now, this entire thing is contingent on Germany getting through Belgium quickly. But Belgium, which is neutral and has no army, which is why Germany thinks they're going to be able to walk through there in about 2 or 3 days, easy peasy. When they go through Belgium, the Belgians, turns out, don't like being invaded and do everything they can to slow the Germans down. The civilian populace starts sniping them. They blow up their dams. They blow up their levees. And Belgium, Netherlands, and the Luxembourg are called the Low Countries for a reason. They're below sea level. So when they blow up their dams and they blow up their bridges and they blow up everything else, half the country floods. And so Germany's got to build bridges, and they've got to find a way around wet spots. And so they're encountering a lot of difficulty, which means they're angrier and angrier at the populace. And there might have been, some serious misdeeds done by the German army. But this entire thing is called the Schlieffen Plan. And again, had they got through Belgium quickly, they probably could have defeated France in a heartbeat. Not saying anything about France because, I love them, but yeah, they're lovers, not fighters. So when Germany starts walking through Belgium and they get really slowed down, that gives the French army enough time to go ahead and meet up with the Germans. And once they slam into each other outside of Paris along the Marne River, they never move for the next 4 years. So the minute Germany enters Belgium, it activates a treaty that Belgium had with Great Britain. And Great Britain declares war on Germany because when Belgium went neutral, they wanted to make sure that they had somebody with a big army and a very awesome navy to help them out. So here are some of the propaganda posters of, we have to help out the Belgians, starving women and children in Belgium, the atrocities, and, just judging by this propaganda poster here, it doesn't look like he's saving her from the fire. So again, all of this is designed to invoke a sense of rage in you against the German army for the atrocities that they either did or didn't commit in Belgium. And this is the sort of things that the French and the British government relied upon to gather up their people and give them this rage to fight. So by mid-August 1914, remember, Sophie and Franz Ferdinand were shot in June. So by mid-August 1914, everybody's at war. You have two sides, and there's the map. And they go by the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente. And here are the armed camps. Here are the major players. And sometimes, I don't know if I've told you that World War I is considered a family war, and we've talked about the fact that the rulers of 3 of the nations were cousins. This is actually not that slide. Whoops. Okay, these are flags. Yeah. Look, Italy changed sides because they said, look, we were in this for a defensive war, not an offensive war. You started this war. We're moving. And they moved over to the other side because they probably realized they'd have a better shot. But they were quickly replaced by the Ottoman Empire. Here are the major players. This is what I was looking for. So this is Nicholas II. He is the Tsar of Russia. This is his cousin. I know, creepy, right? He is George V of Great Britain. He is the King of England. And then, you know, those other people are slightly less important, but you have the President of France and the King of Italy. They're not less important. They're just not as funny looking and interesting. So here is Nick and George's cousin. This is Wilhelm II of Germany. And those 3 are actually first cousins. They are all very closely related to Queen Victoria. And so, you know, this is a cousins' war. And they actually, if you Google it, there's tons of letters between the 3 of them back and forth as to, you know, let's not do this. Please, let's stop this, you know, before it gets started. Once it gets started, it's over. And then you have Franz Joseph, who was the uncle of the dude that was shot, the Emperor King of Austria-Hungary, and the Enver Pasha, who was the ruler of Turkey. Here is the stalemate. Once France and Great Britain on one side, once they slam into Germany, along sometimes the coast of Belgium, and then into France, they don't move for the next 4 years. This is called the Western Front, and it is the obvious failing of the Schlieffen Plan, which means that Germany is going to have to fight a 2-front war. Oh, this makes me angry. Okay, recruitment poster. So here's a recruitment poster for London. There is, you know, King George. He wants you to join up. This was other recruitment posters. Yeah, we're going to have to do this another time. Oh, there's one. Okay. So this is a British recruitment poster. Nothing like making you feel less manly than when your children question you. Daddy, what did you do in the Great War? Implying if you don't do something, your children are going to think you're worthless. You know, who wants the scorn of an 8-year-old? More recruitment posters that didn't show up. Grrr, roar, anger. Look at that. These were cool. You have no idea. If you're looking at what I'm looking at, you're just getting question marks. All right, now, people were really excited about the war. Again, their governments told them you'd be home by Christmas. This is going to be an adventure. Join up with your friends. We're going to have a good time. People had parties beforehand, got them pictures taken of themselves. Yeehaw, wahoo. All right, but once they got there, it was not a party. It was not a good time. Because once you're there, it's trench warfare. Because the only way that you're safe from the machine gun is by getting, you know, underground, which means you're safe from the machine gun, but you're still not safe from, you know, the shells, the giant bombs that they're dropping on you, which sometimes people got buried alive in those trenches. And, you know, you fight for maybe 100 yards, maybe, of land, and you'll fight for months over it, which seems absolutely ridiculous. And life in the trenches is miserable. It's difficult. It's unsanitary. I mean, it's several thousand men living in a hole in the ground together. I mean, you figure it out. It's not pretty. You can't leave. You can't go anywhere. It's cold. It's wet. It's hot. It's stinky in the summer. There's dead bodies, you know, maybe 20 feet from you. There's rats. You're covered in lice. It's gnarly. The new weapons that had been invented in the Industrial Revolution that everybody thought, oh, wow, this is going to, you know, revolutionize warfare. We're going to be, you know, in and out of this by Christmas, didn't lead to a quick victory, which is what they thought it would. Instead, it just leads to, you know, massive loss of life, you know, 500,000 men, you know, dead in one battle. It's just ridiculous. That was probably something cool, and we'll never know. Okay, so this is the Battle of Verdun in February 1916. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes trenches became the final resting place of a lot of people. Each side has 500,000 casualties. That's 1,000,000 men in one battle. It starts with a German offensive. This was a medieval fortress that was in the city of Verdun. Um, this is what it looked like after the battle. Okay, then there was the Somme, which was probably in some ways worse because I don't know what's worse, that the freezing and everybody trying not to, get frostbite, or the heat where everybody's sweating and it's disgusting and there's massive amounts of flies that are there for the corpses and etc. And you're walking through the mud because it still rains because it's Europe and it rains all the time. The Somme is particularly remembered by the British. In one day, you have 60,000 British soldiers killed. Um, in the 5 months that they fought over this strip of land, they had over 1,000,000 men killed. 1,000,000 people in one battle, and still they kept fighting. Yeah. So that's super cool. I'm sure you're impressed. Yeah, I went to a lot of work here to make sure these all flipped. Uh-huh. It's very cool. Yeah, that one's awesome too. Really happy right now. Yeah. Wow, notes are going fast. The battle on the Eastern Front. Okay, the Eastern Front is half of Germany's army, Germany's army and the Austrian army against the Russians and to a very small extent the Serbs. The end of August, there's the Battle of Tannenberg, and as this is going on, the Russians initially make some gains, and they're doing well, and things are good, and then nothing. The unindustrialized Russian economy just can't keep up. They can't resupply. So they're running out of bullets, and they're running out of guns, and they're running out of bombs, and then they're running out of food, and then they're running out of shoes. And, some Russian soldiers were sent over the top and running into no man's land to do nothing more than catch a bullet. And then, if you fell without getting shot, you were encouraged to strip the dead body of another soldier, of a German soldier, so you could take his gun and his ammunition and his shoes and his coat. In the beginning, the Russians are doing, much better against Austria, but again, that lack of resources and the fact that in the Russian army, because Russia is still so behind the times, they still have, peasants that are at the bottom of the social classes, and they haven't had an industrial revolution. So their officers are nobility, they're noble sons, and they're there because they were born into that position, not because they earned it. And again, when it gets cold there, it gets really cold. And some days, hundreds of men froze to death. Check out the little excerpt in your book where it talks about them making shoes out of rope. Okay, by 1916, it was clear that, Russia was dying in this war. They're unable to keep their massive army supplied, but the fact that they do have a massive army, that they are huge, keeps them important. It prevents Germany from sending more troops to the Western Front, but it's at a great cost of Russian lives. The Russians just keep dying and dying. And if you are one of the Russian people and you know that essentially sending your son or your husband or your father or anybody you know off to war is a death sentence because they might not even get a gun, I mean, it becomes clear, people are going to take that for only just so long. And then eventually we're going to have a revolution in Russia. Next chapter. But for this point, Great Britain and France need to do everything they absolutely can to try and keep Russia in the war because they're barely hanging on and they're only fighting half of Germany's army. Did I say that right again? I can't remember. Germany's army. If Russia drops out, they've got to fight all of Germany's army, and that's a little bit more than they can handle. This is a picture of prisoners of war at one of the worst battles for Russia. It's the Battle of Tannenberg, outside of the city of Tannenberg. At one point, the military expertise was so poor that literally the Russian army allowed itself to become encircled by the Germans. And over 30,000 Russian soldiers were taken prisoner of war by Germany's army in one battle. In one battle. So here is the Eastern Front. And that red line is the furthest advance of the Austro and Germans, the Austrians and Germans into Russia before, as we'll see, Russia basically gives up. But you can see down there, the front goes, the Eastern line at the time goes all the way to the Black Sea. It's that little dotted line. And that is why the Allies are desperate to knock Turkey out of the war. Because if they can knock Turkey out of the war, I'm sorry, the Ottoman Empire, they're not Turkey yet. They will be Turkey soon. If they can knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war, then they can get into the Black Sea and resupply Russia to keep Russia going. And they're trying, and you know, the British are throwing every Australian and New Zealander that they can at the Ottoman Empire, but it's not working. They have the high ground, and that's it. So